This video is an early analysis primarily focusing on Blade's potential and what he brings to the table when pairing him up with Jingliu. Are they a best match? Blade. There is so much I can say about Blade. For one, did you know he had jiggle physics? Quick disclaimer, you can assemble any team you like in this game. There are no restrictions on team building, and that's one of the joys of these games. Creating a team with characters you love. So if you want to run the entire High Cloud Quintet, go for it. Jingliu and Blade will only work effectively against enemies with ice and wind weaknesses. It's evident that characters deal significantly less damage when the enemy isn't weak to their elements. At least that is our impression since the start of the game. When was the last time you took your Jingyuan to face a Kafka in MLC Stage 10? I understand some of you might say, oh, I just bring Silverwolf along with Jingyuan, but that doesn't count. Silverwolf is like playing this game on easy mode. So if you pair Blade and Jingliu against a boss lacking wind weakness, you're missing out on damage potential because one of your DPS isn't contributing as much as what two supports spamming their skills on one hyper carry can do. Thus, pairing Blade and Jingliu may not yield as much damage as Jingliu with two other supports. And pause. All of that is what I would have said if I didn't pull for Blade, strictly because I wanted him together with Jingliu. I only brought up the earlier point because that is a key concern that some people may have when it comes to running a double DPS of Blade plus Jingliu. In my opinion, Blade and Jingliu does work regardless of whether it's against enemies with wind weakness or without wind weakness. Let's conduct a very simple experiment. In this scenario, I will be testing how much damage a Scylla can do with a Tingyun and a Pella. For this instance, I'm using a friend Scylla. Ideally, I should be using Yangqing instead, but first of all, I don't have him. Thank God. Second of all, aliens will have to invade us before I build and use the Yangqing as my ice DPS. Here is a quick look at the stats of the Scylla. This isn't some god tier Scylla with insane relics. It's good enough, right? Like, I have seen some content creators with a much weaker Scylla than this one. Some of you may be wondering, why not Bronya? Bronya and Scylla are like the best duo. Here are my reasonings. Not everyone is lucky enough to get a Bronya. This includes myself. 2. Tingyun, while not free, has appeared on Jingyuan's banner. She has also appeared in the exchange shop, and inherently as a 4-star character, it is much easier to summon her. So both support characters are much more likely to be in people's accounts. The goal is to test whether the damage Scylla loses from having one support can be mitigated by a second damage dealer. In this case, it would be my Blade. Okay, so what happens if I try this scenario against a boss that is not weak to wind? Blade is doing this amount of damage with no supports. This time Pella will be using her ulti to shred the boss defense. Blade is doing this amount of damage with one support, a Pella. Scylla is doing this amount of damage with no supports. This time Pella will be using her ulti to shred the boss defense. Scylla is doing this amount of damage with one support, a Pella. We're going to use both of Tingyun's buff, her ulti and her skill onto Scylla. And then we're going to use Pella's ulti to shred the boss defense. She also happens to have Luca's Lycone. Scylla is doing this amount of damage with two supports, a Pella and a Tingyun. Bunch of numbers, but what can we conclude from all of this? I'll be rounding down, by the way. Please keep in mind this boss is particularly weak against the Quantum type and does not have a wind weakness. This Scylla does around 14k with no supports, 38k with one support, a Pella, and finally 65k with two supports, a Pella and a Tingyun. The difference of damage between the Scylla with 1 support versus 2 supports is around 27k. This blade does 22k of damage with 1 support, a Pella. This means replacing the Ting Yun with a blade will result around a 5k damage loss. This is not a lot. But wait, there's more. I forgot to mention this blade is running speed boots. That means he should be taking more than 1 action in some turn orders. Also, Blade has additional damage from his talent stacks. So overall, running Blade and Jingliu might even do more damage than running Jingliu in a hyper carry. Of course, this is only for this scenario. Things might be a little bit different if we replace the Ting Yun with, let's say, a Bronya. There's always other variables to look out for, but this is a good start to say that Blade and Jingliu might actually work together. There are some holes in this little experiment. First of all, I am not considering any crit or crit damage deviations. Second, the exponential increase in damage when you multiple stack a bunch of buff on one character. For example, what happens when you stack a Bronya skill, a Bronya ulti, a Ting Yun skill, and a Ting Yun ulti, all of that onto your Scylla. Number 3, I did not bring speed of characters into the equation. With a high speed blade, he might be able to take more than 1 action per turn, thus that should increase his damage output per turn. Point number 2, skill points. What about skill points? SP consumption is another concern some people may have regarding the Blade and Jingliu duo. Will 2 damage dealers take up too many skill points? Well, if I have a Jing Yuan and a Scylla as my double damage dealer, then maybe skill points may become an issue. Heck, even Dragon Hung himself is sucking away most of skill points by himself. Even this 4-star gambling gremlin, his SP consumption is pretty high. This issue, however, is not an issue at all with Blade and Jingliu. My man Blade uses 1 skill point every 4 turns. Yes, he himself may not be generating any skill points, so technically he's an SP negative. But are you trying to tell me your team comp is so skill point hungry that you can't spare 1 skill point for Blade every 4 turns? Even Dragon Hung team can spare 1 skill point every 4 turns. Even the broken autoplay AI can use Blade well enough to have his skill up 100% of the time. And this AI has done some ludicrous stuff on autoplay. Both Blade and Jingliu's combined SP usage per turn will still be less than what Dragon Hung is consuming per turn. Stop right there. I am not slandering the beautiful Dragon Man. I'm just bringing up the fact that if people can work with Dragon Hung using 2 or 3 SP per turn by himself, then the total usage of Blade and Jingliu should be very workable. Point number 3. Not too many bosses have both Ice and Wind as their elemental weakness. Let's check the official listing for all the potential enemies in this game so far. This does not include the new enemies in 1.3's Swarm Disaster. Now here is a list of all the enemies that have both Ice and Wind elemental weaknesses. The notable ones here are the Crazy Ape, the Spear Disciple boss that keeps showing up in our Memory of Chaos, as well as the Cannon ad, one of the Trotters, and finally this ad from Belobog. After you remove the ads, that is only 2 boss enemies with both Wind and Ice weaknesses. But earlier on I have talked about why Blade will function just fine if the boss does not have Wind weakness. So what are the enemies with Ice or Wind weakness? Almost every single boss enemies in Memory of Chaos are weak to either Wind or Ice. This is with the exception of the Prowler, Japard, and Bronya. Oh, and Cocolia, but I don't remember her being in Memory of Chaos. This means having both Blade and Jingliu can almost cover up most of the possible stages in Memory of Chaos. And this number is only going to go up because Hoyoverse will 100% release enemies that are weak to the Ice element in 1.4 with Jingliu's release date. With those three concerns out of the way, let's begin and talk about Blade's talent. I'm not sure if everyone knows how much synergy his talent alone has with Jingliu. In case anyone does not know, Blade's talent is that he has a stacking mechanic. Every time he receives damage, he gains a stack. It does not matter how he receives the damage, he will get a stack. This includes if his teammate hits him. Dot damage, 1 stack. Got punched in the face by the crazy ape, 1 stack. Self-infliction from his own skill or attack, 1 stack. Once his stack reaches 5 stacks, or 4 stacks for the people out there getting that paper, he will do an AoE follow-up attack and heal. Jingliu being able to speed up how fast Blade can get his stacks is a game changer. We have to consider Blade by himself can already get his stacks fairly quickly. Let me give you Blade's worst case scenario when it comes to getting stacks in turn 1. First, he begins by using his skill, that's 1 stack. And then he attacks, that's 2 stacks in total. None of the enemies hit him, so that's still 2 stacks. I assume this Blade is as slow as Lightning Lord, so he won't be getting any extra action this turn. If your Jingliu is fast enough, she can give Blade 2 more stacks in turn 1. So Blade by himself in his worst case scenario will only net himself 2 stacks in turn 1. But Blade with a fast Jingliu will get him 4 stacks in total turn 1. Keep in mind, that's his worst case scenario still. I won't be doing any math on how much HP in total Jingliu's teammates should have on this video. The math stuff will be covered in a later, more detailed video when all of Jingliu's kits and the numbers are hard confirmed. What I can say is, no matter what the numbers will be at the end, Blade's beefy build will be able to cover most of whatever HP requirement Jingliu will need for her teammates. In summary, here are the points I have addressed. 1. Dual DPS loses out damage to a single hyper carry DPS. A decently built Blade can come close to the damage loss from removing one of the supports in a hyper carry DPS comp. 2. There are not enough skill points to go around. Blade is 1 skill point every 4 turns. Jingliu should also be skill point efficient. Skill point issue is not an issue for these two specifically. If you can't manage to keep Blade in his enhanced states 100% of the time, then that's actually a skill issue. 3. Not enough enemies have wind and /or ice weaknesses. Almost every single boss enemy in Memory of Chaos is either weak to wind, ice, or both, with the exception of Japard, the Ice Prowler, and Bronya. 4. Jingliu will help speed up Blade in getting his stacks. This is very helpful when Blade isn't getting hit as much as he likes. 5. Blade's sturdy build meets Jingliu's teammates' HP requirements, whatever that is. With all that said, I firmly believe Blade and Jingliu will make a good pair, but not necessarily the best. Why is that? This entire video, I have been extremely favorable towards Blade. In my opinion, the best match belongs to a certain Foxian beauty. If you watched this far, thank you. If you disagree with anything I have just said, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and bye bye.